Ahlan Firdaus.
Bonjour, bonjour.
Bonjour, bonjour, ça va?
Oui, très bien. Toi?
Ça va bien, merci. Donc pour la
Alhamdulillah.
session d'aujourd'hui, ça sera peut-être en arabe ou en anglais, je crois. Ça dépend de l'audience. Salut Leïla.
D'accord.
Uh, uh, Hello Leïla, can you hear us?
Hello, yes, I can hear you.
Okay, so Firdaus, you're okay with English, right?
Yeah, it's okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm fine.
Uh,
Sure.
so we'll give it a couple of more minutes, see if anybody else is going to join while I set up the screen. How is your week so far? Or it's the end of the week, right?
Yeah, it's the weekend for me.
Okay. Mhm, 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 yes. Mhm. Okay, so I'll share my screen just so we're all looking at the same thing. Okay, so we'll start just a little bit light while we wait for everyone. Have you had any introduction to SAFe before? Have you been exposed to it, or is this your first time?
For me, it's my first time.
Okay. How about for those?
I have already a session with Mustafa, and I got the leading safe certification, which is expired for now. So, yeah, I have an experience.
Ah, fair enough. So you got which version, 5 or 6?
Yes, the 5.
5. Fair enough, fair enough. We can argue that the SAFe is improving. So we can make the argument that 6 is better than 5.
For sure, yeah.
Um, And how about agility? I know Firdaus, you're with us in the group, so you are exposed to agility and Scrum. How about Leila? Do you have any exposure to basically agile frameworks in general? Anything other than
Yeah,
SAFe?
I'm familiar with the Scrum Canonical and Agile in general.
Okay.
Uh, I'm a certified Agile tester also.
Agile tester, okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Yeah, it looks like agility is going everywhere, and maybe
Yeah.
that's a good thing.
Yes.
Okay, so I'll just start with a quick intro. I mean we have a lot of people registered, but it does look like anybody is coming yet. So that I don't waste your time, I'll give you just a quick intro to get the context of why SAFe exists, sort of. Uh, First thing is you have this website, Scaled Agile Framework. It's accessible to everyone, and it is the official basically resource by SAFe. So it is always kept up to date, and I would recommend that you look into it if you find any specific thing that you are interested in. Uh, this picture here may look intimidating if it's your first time looking at it, but one good thing is each of these are clickable links. So if you find something that's interesting for you, so for example, you see an RTE and you ask yourself, what is an RTE? You just click and it's going to give you an entire article about the topic. When you first get introduced to SAFe, you you start into down this rabbit hole, and well, you spend a lot of time on it. I don't know if that has been your experience too, Firdaus. I see Firdaus got disconnected.
The first version, no.
It is being recorded.
Okay.
For the first version, it wasn't.
I see. Okay. So it's a very good resource. One thing that I like about SAFE is they do a lot of research and they collect a lot of best practices. One strange thing that I usually always tell people when I am running a SAFE workshop is I would never recommend SAFE as a framework for someone right off the bat. The same way I would never recommend Scrum as a framework to someone right off the bat. The right recommendation, in my opinion, would be to learn about a framework. So basically teach the people who are going to be using it, teach them the framework, and then let the people tell us how this framework can best help them. Because the concept of agility is that teams are supposed to be self-managed. Imposing a framework kind of puts a bit of limitations on it. And SAFE resolves some very specific use cases that may not necessarily be true. But even if SAFE in its entirety is not necessarily useful for you, some of these best practices, if they fit your context, might be worth looking into. Okay. So a quick intro, and I see we have Firdaus and Samiha. You guys are now veterans in agility. So allow me to go through this introduction. Samiha, you can hear us, right?
Hello, Hisham.
Hello.
Yes, can hear you.
All right, that's good. Yeah. So in a
Thanks for the
sense,
presentation.
in terms of professional frameworks, the first to come out were lean frameworks, and lean frameworks were mainly for manufacturing. And the concept behind lean is you want to remove waste as much as possible. The reason for that is anything you build, you're building multiple times over. So when you're making a car, you're making 100,000 cars. So any waste that you have in making one car is going to be multiplied by the number of products that you have. So the focus was really on cutting the waste. Now move to the digital age a little bit. Now, if we make something, making more of it is just a simple matter of copy paste, a little bit more complex, but generally it required less effort. So there was less of a focus on the ability to cut waste and more of a focus on the ability to respond to change. That's why the framework started focusing on the agility part, which building capabilities, so we are able to respond to change. Scrum was early on mainly focused for the team levels, and there was also other frameworks. XP is maybe a little bit more famous, but that one focused a little bit more on the technical best practices, whereas Scrum tried to basically satisfy team requirements and management requirements. One problem that if anybody has tried implementing SAFE early on, which is a problem that I faced personally with a company, is when we have a lot of teams that are trying to work together, Scrum doesn't necessarily provide any guidance on that. So you were at least before left on your own when you have that type of situation. And that's where scaled agile came to be. So scaled agile is trying to solve the problem where you have multiple teams trying to work toward the same objective. And one of the most popular frameworks for scaled agility is basically SAFE. For two reasons, I would say. One reason is that they do a lot of research in trying to collect some of the best practices in the industry and putting them in one resource. And the second is because they do spend a lot of resources marketing themselves and talking to the industry to make sure that decisions makers in the industries are at least aware of SAFE and friendly to SAFE, sort of. Does this kind of cover the context for you? Do you have any questions about SAFE in general, why it exists or its purpose?
Yes, clear for me.
All right, all good. Yeah, so generally it's good to learn about it, about framework. For me, it has helped me a lot. It was my first introduction to design thinking. It was my first introduction to system thinking. And it was my first introduction to trunk-based development. And each of these topics, they're like an ocean by themselves. They have their own resources. So in a sense, I recommend it as one place where you can get a lot of connection to some best practices. But I would advise that you shouldn't necessarily follow that best practice the way SAFe is implemented. Because, for example, when you talk about Lean UX was made in order to solve a very specific problem. Now, SAFe came and used it inside its framework. So the way SAFe uses it is not necessarily the same way it is implemented if you use it alone. So SAFe is a very good way for you to get connected to a best practice. But if that best practice is important to you, I would advise that you dig deeper into the source material so that you learn a little bit more about it. Is that clear to everyone? Okay, everyone is summed up. All right, so now the purpose of this meeting is to just have a look at the different certifications that are there. See if any of them might be interesting for you. Now, there is an implementation roadmap that SAFe recommends, and you can see it here if you go to Scaled Agile Framework. At the bottom, at the footer, you see implementation roadmap. So if you click on it, you get an entire article where SAFe sort of recommends how you can go about implementing SAFe. Just let me know. I just got a message that my connection is a little bit shifty. So if you got an issue, just let me know. Fair enough. So this is how SAFe kind of recommends that the implementation goes. At the very beginning, what they do recommend is the course that you said, Firdaus, that you took, Leading SAFe. And this is the course that tries to cover SAFe end-to-end. So in a sense, anybody who's interested in knowing the framework, this is the best introductory course that they can get into, Leading SAFe. And the reason why they recommend starting with this, because at the end of the day, people inside the organization don't know what they're agreeing to. So in a sense, you want to know what the framework does before you commit to whether you are willing to implement it within the organization or not. Ideally, they say if the decision is to go implement it, that's when you try as an organization to send people for a certificate called SPC, SAFe Planning Consultant. And this certificate is a little bit like Leading SAFe, but it goes a lot more depth in terms of not how SAFe is set up, but how you could actually transform an organization in order for it to become SAFe compliant, sort of. SAFe certificate is the type of certificate that I took. So if you want to give courses for people who want to be accredited in SAFe, this is the certification that you need. So SPCs can train other people in all the other certificates. All right. So then first one is Leading SAFe. That's the one that tells you how the framework is set up. The other course is Lean Portfolio Management. Now, Lean Portfolio Management is where budgeting decisions are made, sort of. If one of the things that most agile frameworks sort of skim over is the decision, should we have this team or not? Should we focus? We focus mainly on the features, but whether the team should exist or not is not necessarily discussed. Whereas the reality in most organizations is that is a decision. You decide when you have contractors, that decision is a little bit more explicit, whether you maintain the contract with them or not. But even when they're in-house, you do have to sometimes make a decision of whether should we continue working on that specific product or not. So these decisions will affect how you work. when you have a developer inside the team and they're worried about whether they're going to be able to keep their job or not, best practices on how to prioritize features or how to produce quality code are not necessarily going to help them, but an awareness about how this decision is being made and the ability to affect that decision is what's going to allow them to negotiate a better position within the organization. So lean portfolio management is where SAFe proposes how budgeting decisions can be made in a way that enables agility rather than limit it. Did anyone get exposed to lean portfolio management or budgeting decision within your organization?
Sorry, Hisham, can you repeat the question? I'm sorry.
Have you worked like as part of your work, were you involved in budgeting decisions where you set the budget for the year? What are we going to work on and these type of discussions?
Well, it was for my own project, not at enterprise scale, okay, but for the project I've been working with.
Okay, so how do you decide on the budget for your project?
Well, they do have like some processes, predefined processes, and it was like meetings between the board, let's say, the managers and the directors, and it was predefined, honestly, predefined, and then you have to divide, of course, the budget, but it was predefined, yeah.
So you'd say it was more top-down sort of.
Exact, top down, yeah.
Yeah, so generally there are two approaches, top-down and bottom-up.
Yeah.
The suggestion that SAFe proposes is something called participatory budgeting. It's a way that you can think of it as a little bit similar to liberating structures, but for budgeting decisions. So they have a workshop that's called participatory budgeting, where you get all the key stakeholders within the organization, and you try to come up with a budget that takes all their input into consideration, rather than the input of just one person or the top deciding. So that's for lean portfolio management. There is value stream and art identification workshop. There is a concept within SAFe that basically says we want to organize around value. I think it's the reality for all of us that when you go to an organization, you have a head of HR, you have a head of sales, you have a head of operation, you have a head of development, you might have a head of quality. So you have a head of support. They might have different names like general director or VP or whatever, but the idea is that there is one person in charge of a certain function within the organization. Now, the problem with this type of setup is if I'm working on a product, any decent product requires skill set from all these functionalities all at the same time. And if the head of a specific functionality, say head of quality, is the one that sets how work is done or how quality is defined within the organization, then if my product requires a tweak in the definition, then I'm in a situation where I have to involve the head of quality. You will find the situation in large companies that have sometimes dozens of products. Every single change in the way we're working ends up requiring the involvement of the CEO before you can make that change. So that obviously is like you're less likely to argue for a change because who needs the hassle of involving the CEO in like a small minor change? So the idea of organizing around value is a little bit similar to matrix organizations in normal project management, where you take only the people needed for a specific objective to be achieved, and as far as the work is concerned, these people are reporting within this matrix organization. They're not reporting to their actual direct report within HR. So you don't have to switch the reporting structure in the organization, but at least as far as the work is concerned, it is handled within the art in the case of SAFE or whatever matrix organization setup you have. Is that a concept you guys were exposed to, or I want to know if I should elaborate a little bit or if this is clear enough?
Well, it's clear based on the framework, but maybe sharing my experience. I've been working with Infor, which is a corporate. It's an international corporate, and we had like hundreds of teams, hundreds of projects, products, and the team responsible of, let's say, product vision and mission and value, added value. It was like a product, the product management team. And we reported to this product management team, but basically with the help of governance team to, of course, manage the RT launch and the release management and the release planning and whatever. It was like a real, let's say, big picture of the process, and we handled the processes. It was all defined and followed daily by those teams. But it wasn't like, let's say, per project. It was like at really enterprise level. I wasn't involved, but I was reporting to those teams. So yeah. I guess it's this not the same. They are not following the framework really 100%, but they are doing well.
Yeah. So one thing about the framework in SAFE is it allows you a lot of flexibility in terms of how you implement it. And generally, because you hire a consultancy to help you launch an art within your organization. So these consultancies do not really have an incentive to push you too much towards best practices if there is some resistance. And this idea of organizing around value is a place where there is usually a lot of resistance because it does carry a lot of risk. I was lucky enough to work within a startup. So we had around 50 people in the organization. So we were actually able to make the case and organize people around value. And we made a couple of changes. Like even we're talking about only 50 people. We made like 3 or 4 changes until we got into a structure that we were confident works well for us. So for a very large organization, that's a very big risk for them to take, especially when you have hundreds. So the suggestion is usually you want to try to pick an easy case to start with, just to prove the value.
Yeah, maybe just for this point, the solution they found this is to divide the, let's say, products to multiple business units by business unit and by, let's say, level of risk. So for the products, like, for example, products doing well, so they don't need a big follow-up or too much follow-up. For those are in, doing not very well, and they divided the products by business unit and by groups. So it was like a good solution because every let's say group of products have his own managers to build and implement the process inside.
Yeah, so it's very hard to basically judge what's a good setup because it's going to be specific to each company.
Exactly. Yeah.
But one general rule of thumb is if the people doing the work, that means building the application for you, if they don't have access to the logic, how basically the strategy for the product is set up, or if there is a lot of feedback requirement where they do something and they have to wait for feedback within the organization, then generally that means this organization around value wasn't done in an optimal way. Like there is a lot of room for improvement. What you want to remove is the need for somebody inside the team. You want to remove the likelihood that somebody inside the team is going to be blocked because of a resource internal to the organization, if that makes sense.
Mm-mm.
Okay. So this is a workshop that you would usually try to do. I find that sometimes some organizations don't even have a very good definition of their product. So they don't have a very good, categorization of their products and features. So then this becomes even more difficult because they don't really understand what their value is. Like you could have, we had a company that wanted to do the definition in terms of, okay, we're going to have one group that's handling mobile applications. And we're going to have another group that's going to be handling our main system and the front end part, which is web-based. So that's the initial setup that they did. But once they started looking into it, they found that a lot of their features are crossing in between these things. Like whatever you do in your core system is affecting how your mobile application works. So then they tried to basically break it into, we have something called the B2B, as in we have, imagine a CRM. So you are selling a CRM as a service, and the company that has the CRM needs to do some administration for its own client. So that's admin type of features are one thing. And then there are the features that their clients can use. And these are sort of like B2B2C kind of applications. So they did the breakdown that way. But even then they found that, oh, actually the way I service my customers is limited by what kind of functionalities I have in at the admin panel. So then the last setup that they settled with is they had to actually define what services am I giving to this specific client. And based on that, every group of services that a specific client finds valuable by themselves, I got somebody joining. Every group of services, I would group them and give it a name. That's how they handled the organization later. So when we did that, it was a lot easier to organize around value. But the bigger your company, the more hectic this kind of exercise can become. But it's useful to have these definition of where your value is and who exactly is benefiting from it. If this makes sense. Hello, Dua, you're joining us. Can you hear us?
Yes, أهلا وسهلا.
Yeah, أهلا وسهلا فيك. Okay,
Okay.
so we had just a quick intro of what SAFE is, and are you familiar with SAFE, or is this your first introduction?
This is my first one. Actually, reminder لسه جايلي حالا. I know إن أنا I lost 30 minutes.
No
بس
problem.
إن شاء الله كمان معاك بعدين أبقى go deeper إن شاء الله.
Okay, so for those of you who don't have it yet, I will share a voucher for a Udemy course that I have. It's about a 3-hour video that goes a little bit more in depth about SAFE. So that's going to give you a reasonably good introduction. But for now, just so that we save time a little bit, the focus is on the certifications and the workshops that SAFE has to offer, so that you guys can determine what might be of interest to you. So we did talk about leading SAFE, implementing SAFE, lean portfolio management, and then the value stream and art identification workshop. Now, when you are preparing the art, that's when you're gonna actually start working within the structure of SAFE itself. So you would want a lot more key decision makers to be trained in SAFE. Then we have SAFE product owner and product manager. This kind of focuses, it does give a bit of an introduction about what product management is. But the main focus is the role of somebody who is a PO, a product owner, inside the SAFE organization. So while it is a good course for people who are going to be working as a product owners inside the SAFE organization, it's not necessarily the best course for someone who's mainly interested in product management. People who are mainly interested in product management, I would advise there is a certificate later on that's called Agile Product Management. But
Okay.
we'll get to it in time. Scrum Master, again, it's a similar type of setup. It's a good course for somebody who's going to fill in the role of a Scrum Master or team coach within a SAFE organization. It's not necessarily the best course for somebody to take who wants to understand Scrum. I guess if your interest is mainly Scrum, either Scrum Alliance or Scrum.org are probably your best bet. These are the best resources for you to get Scrum. I think now less sort of left them a little bit. They have their own Scrum guide. But anyway, these two resources are probably the best. For someone who wants a career as a coach within SAFE organizations, then RTE probably and implementing SAFE are the two courses that I would recommend a lot more than the team coach or Scrum Master. Then SAFE for architect, one of the biggest limitation that at least I found, and I got that feedback from other people too. See, with agility, we have this key idea that we want to try small things frequently, and as small as possible and as frequent as possible. But sometimes the setup at the client side, when we go to them, is they are not able to deploy on a daily basis. They are not even able to deploy on a weekly basis, and sometimes they're not even able to deploy on a monthly basis. So in a sense, if you're not able to deploy to production that small test that we wanted to do, then all this idea of making small bets and testing them is no longer applicable to your case. That's why it is very important to have somebody take an architecture class. Basically, how do you set up the system so that it enables all the functionalities that will allow you to be agile? If the architecture is too rigid, then all the agility ideas are just going to be ideas, basically. People intimately close to the code are just going to tell you everything you want is impossible. I don't know if that has been your experience, Firdaus and Samiha.
For me, not really, honestly.
Okay. I mean, have you found a limitation in the ability of the architecture to basically deploy frequently, or was that not an issue in the organization you were working?
It wasn't an issue. It wasn't an issue because everything was like really well defined. The processes were up means already in execution and working fine. So it was an issue when we started migrating from an old architecture to a new, but not during the, let's say, art process.
I don't know. In my case, I would go in missions, so they would only call me when things are really bad. So if things are really good, then nobody is really calling me because they don't need me. Samiha, you wanted to say something? I saw.
Yes, in my present mission, our architecture is really an issue because it is not yet aligned with the target model for processes and organization. And it's really a big problem, and it's a very big limitation. And there is no way to adapt the basic must be that the architecture must be set it up set it up to be able to align the organization and to align processes with the architecture, and not in the inverse way.
Yeah, yeah. Like I'll give you an example with an organization I worked with. If the developers wanted to test how their code works on the real application, they didn't really have the environment to do that. They didn't have access to production. They didn't have a robust enough staging environment that had like reasonably good data. So a lot of times they are coding blind about how this actual feature is actually going to look like when it goes to production. So when it gets deployed to the production, they're as surprised as we are about how it's behaving.
And in this way, you can't have control on your delivery workflow because you are not independent in the entire workflow.
Yeah, it definitely complicates things. So it makes our job, me and you, Samiha, a little bit more interesting.
No, more interesting, and you have a big backlog behind you. Every day you have something to do, and
Yeah.
issues.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's good. How about Dua and Layla? Have you had any exposure to like, have you ever faced any issues with architecture, or has that not been an issue for you guys?
For the Agile and Scrum, yeah, most of the problems are actually related to the committing to the process and maybe orienting the rest of the team members that we should follow the process, repeating the steps over and over again. And also the deployment problem you mentioned. It's like it's not always the user stories or the tasks or the features are deliverable. Some blockers happens by the end of the sprint or by the end of the maybe the quarter that requires like further enhancement, further requirements that blocks the release. So mainly the goal is not met as expected in the Scrum. I think the same, yes.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, and some of these concerns are actually like part of the DevOps, the way you handle your deployment pipeline. So what's safe here is kind of saying is even like if you have an issue in your deployment pipeline, sometimes this issue cannot really be solved operationally. So that's why safer architecture needs to come first. You need to make sure that the architecture allows you to even consider stuff like continuous integration and continuous deployment and these type of things.
Yes.
Yeah. So Safer Architect is again basically a good course to understand what are the technical limitations. Like no matter how much improvement we make to the culture, to the mindset, to the ways of working, if the architecture doesn't support certain things, like we lose 90% of the benefits.
Yep.
After that, there is Safe for Teams, and that's basically to understand your role as an individual inside a team that's working within Safe Framework. It's a little similar to the developer certificate that Scrum.org has. So in a sense, any team member, I would recommend that they would take it. But again, any team member that's working within a safe context. If you're not necessarily working within a safe context, then it might not be necessarily the best course for you to take. And I think for me and for most trainers, this is the course that we deliver the most. Because generally for every product owner, we have at least 5 team members. So every organization that's training a product owner also wants to train 5 or 10 team members. So generally, we conduct this one a lot, but it's in my recommendation is even for a team member, if they have the choice between taking C4 teams and taking leading safe, I would recommend that they would take leading safe, because understanding the context that they're in is going to allow them to know which direction they can experiment and which direction they should not. Whereas if you simply take safe for teams, because it's a heavy content, it's a process heavy type of content, you will know what you need to follow, but not necessarily why. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So the other course is Agile Product Management. Agile Product Management is the one that actually focuses more on the discipline of product management. What is needed, how to set things up. It does talk a little bit about your role inside a safe organization in terms of how you deal with the stakeholders in a safe organization, how you talk to the lean portfolio management team. But these are type of instructions that are going to be true to any product manager in any context. I think for those, this is the one you were interested in.
Yeah, exactly. So it's not focusing on what is like product strategy, vision, and maybe the techniques to use.
Yeah, it's I can think.
Okay, yeah. We have the certification details. Okay. Mm-hmm. Sorry.
So I was trying to get the curriculum. Yeah, so analyzing your role as product manager in the lean enterprise,
Lean enterprise, okay.
exploring the market, how to do market segmentation, strategy, little bit of design thinking, product strategy and vision, roadmap. So you see they're all basically focused on the discipline of product management, not necessarily like it's in my opinion, it's useful whether you are working in a safe organization or not.
Exactly. Yeah. For sure.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Safe DevOps is another certificate. This one, so I really like the definition of DevOps. I really like the definition of DevOps in safe. It's basically everything that happens from the moment somebody has an idea until the moment a user is benefiting from it. So in a sense, by this definition, everybody in the organization is part of DevOps. Yeah, and this is both good and bad. Good because in practice, that's what DevOps is supposed to be. Sometimes it is bad because you get people coming to the DevOps course thinking that they are getting an infrastructure course, which is a technical course, whereas DevOps is not that. They do talk a little bit about best practices in deployment and in integration, but that is not the core. It's mainly process related. I think you can see that the way they recommend it for product managers, they recommend it for business analysts. I don't know where it is written. They don't have it here. But generally, basically, the key idea is that DevOps is not a technical course. It's not going to teach you how to set up a CDI, but it is going to teach you how to evaluate deployment pipeline.
Okay.
Where are the risks? What do you need to look out for? Maybe I'll just highlight one thing that I don't know if we have the exact thing here. Yeah. Let's just look at this one. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah, so for them, DevOps is basically continuous exploration. These are all the steps that you need to do in order to decide what to build. Then continuous integration. These are all the steps that you need to do in order to actually build it. Then continuous deployment. These are all the steps you need to do in order to make sure that what you build is ready to be delivered to the user. And then the release on demand is what the steps you need to do to basically make sure that the user can use it and to learn from how they are basically using it, in a sense. So one thing that I really liked about this is basically, again, if you go to SAFe, the Scaled Agile Framework main website, each of these is an article with a lot of details. So if you have where you can dive a little bit deeper. But one thing that I liked is each category here. So for example, continuous exploration, what they tell you is if you go to an organization and they have a problem with alignment. So if they have a problem with alignment, what you need to do is you need to look at the techniques in continuous exploration, because that's where you're probably getting something wrong. If you go to an organization and you see that the product that they're building is not of good quality, they have a problem with quality, then continuous integration, all the best practices here are probably going to be useful to you. If your problem is speed, that means your organization is very slow delivering new features or fixing issues for clients, then most probably what's blocking you is somewhere in the continuous deployment. So looking at the best practices here are probably going to help you. If you are not getting any value, like for a startup, if you're not making any money or whatever the definition of value for your department, if you're not getting value, then probably you're missing some of these practices here. Like I remember, first company I worked with, we did the mapping for their processes, and we realized that we were not doing these two processes. Like we would stop here. That's all we really cared about. Nobody in the organization was measuring how much utilization basically the feature is getting. Nobody was trying to learn anything from it. So just that realization is by itself was actually a good thing for the organization. Because like, okay, oh sure, maybe we need to just set up a dashboard. We connected to Pendo, started looking at certain things like where are the features that are most used by our customers and stuff like that. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, so Agile Product Management and SAFe DevOps, these are the two a little bit more advanced courses, but to me, these are useful regardless of whether you are working in a SAFe organization or not. They are best practices in any, I would say mostly software development, even though SAFe can actually work with manufacturing also. I don't have that much experience at the solution level with SAFe. Haven't worked with hardware companies. So my recommendation is still going to be just for software kind of products. The last, sorry?
Question, Hisham. What is the easiest one between both?
What is the easiest? Well, it depends on your experience, right? If you are working as a product manager, then you're gonna, like everything in Agile product management is gonna be very easy for you. But if you are working day to day with, basically, if you are intimately familiar with problems in deployment, if things like our pipeline is choked, are things that from time to time, then SAFe DevOps is going to be a little bit easier for you to stomach. But if you don't even know what a deployment pipeline is, then SAFe DevOps is going to be a little bit of a shock, even though it's not really that.
I see.
It's going to be a lot of information at once.
Yeah, because both of them are advanced, so they are like, yeah.
Yes. So your experience is going to tell us whether you're going to find it a little bit easier to understand the material or not, especially since the workshop usually is a little bit more focused. I've been trying to basically offer the courses over a longer period, as in we do like 4 hours a week over a period of a month or two. But until now, I haven't found people who are willing, because mostly people, when they sign up, they want to get the certificate as quickly as possible. So prolonging it doesn't serve that purpose. But if your objective is to basically digest the material, slower pace is probably better.
Yep. Thank you, Aisha.
And one key thing, I know you guys probably also went for other certifications, so you probably have seen this phenomena. So the more experience you have in product management, the harder it is for you to pass the safe agile product management course. You face that, right? I think
Yeah, because of the habits, right? Yeah.
exactly, yeah. Because
Yeah.
you're gonna answer what you would actually do in your work, and what you're gonna do at your work might actually be correct, but it's not safe framework. It's not compliant.
Exactly. Yeah.
So that's like I remember whenever I trained juniors and seniors at the same time during the course, the junior is a little bit more stressed, but then I tell them, well, chances are the junior is most likely gonna pass, no problems. The senior is gonna have a lot of trouble with it.
Yeah, this is why I asked it for which is the easiest one, because today, even in business analysis, so if you have like habits, you have you will be like taking too much time to digest the book or the certification, because it's totally different from what you are doing in reality. So yeah.
Yeah, I saw you are organizing stuff around CBAP, right?
Yes, yes, yes. I'm preparing for SEBA, but I'm also volunteering with IIBA in Sudan chapter, and we already like did SEBA preparation session. Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. Earlier, when I started in Agile, I used to my team, everyone that I have, I would have them go through a Udemy course that's CBAP. They don't necessarily go for the certification, but I would have them go through the entire course. Because I find that because most of the workshops in agility are just 2 days, you don't cover a lot of basic techniques that I think are good things to be aware of, even if I don't necessarily like, I'll give you an example. For example, a RASI matrix is not something I'd necessarily recommend in an organization. But knowing how to set it up, I think is useful. It allows you to understand
Exactly.
how to set things up.
Exactly. Yeah.
So that is, yeah, that's cool. There are other certificates that are not visible here because they don't have a version 6 yet. There is only the previous version, which is version 5. One is called Safe for Government. And even though it says for government, it's not necessarily for government. It's like it's for big clients. And the reason why they have a certification for it by itself is because a lot of the work for governments and big clients is managing large suppliers that are delivering some sort of solution for you. So that certificate is kind of focused on that. And there is safe software engineering. That's also an advanced course. It's a little bit like Agile product management, but it is focused a little bit more on the technical side. I think I haven't mentioned the release train engineer. That's like an advanced Scrum Master, you can think of it. Basically, you're a coach for multiple teams that each have their own coach. And the safe advanced Scrum Master, I would say the same advice with Safe Scrum Master and Advanced Scrum Master is if your interest is in Scrum specifically, then Safe is not necessarily the best source for that knowledge. I would rather you would take a PSM1 and PSM2 and then go for a leading Safe. That's going to give you a much better view of what your role as a Scrum Master in Safe should be than just taking, let's say, Safe Scrum Master. So with this, I come to the end, I guess, of my presentation. Let me, I think, stop the recording and then we can just open the discussion.